When asking why is literature important, it is worthwhile considering what is literature. Kenneth Rexroth, Encyclopaedia Britannica, defines it as, first and foremost, humankind's entire body of writing. Literature is therefore all types of writings. It is the great novels we have read, the amazing books we studied at school, the poetry we have enjoyed. Introducing children to literature from an early age has the aim of developing a love of reading and a love of literature. As Walter Sawyer wrote, literature has a very important role with the development of a child, with a great exposure to literature being an important part of child development. Sawyer also wrote that literature can be seen throughout life as the friend and companion it deserves to be. Literature is fundamental in teaching important lessons and providing positive influences on our children. It assists with positive self-image, connecting with and learning about people from all around the world. Literature instills a curiosity for life, but can also provide an escape. It gives us a better understanding of the world and teaches tolerance. The importance of literature in documenting history cannot be understated. Imagine if there was no historical, literary documentation of the Holocaust. Imagine if the facts of these events were not known. Fortunately, there are many poems, books, fiction and non-fiction, written by first and second generation survivors. There are screenplays and movies written and made about the Holocaust. The Diary of Anne Frank was written by a young Jewish girl who, together with her family, were hiding from the Germans for 2 years. They were eventually captured and placed into a concentration camp. Anne Frank did not survive. Schindler's Ark, an historical novel by Thomas Keneally, tells the story of a Nazi party member, Oskar Schindler, who saves over 1,000 Jews from concentration camps. Both these pieces of literature and many more teach us about these devastating events that must never be forgotten. Some argue that poetry is too beautiful a form of literature to be used when writing of the horrors of the Holocaust. However, in her poem, I'm Telling This Story, written by Magdalena Klein and found in the book Pearls and Lace, she tells of her survival of the Holocaust. Klein's poetry is another important reminder of how literature can help people understand what other people have endured. So the book I have chosen is The Tattooist of Auschwitz, written by Heather Morris. The book is based on interviews between the author and Leo Sokolov, who was a tattooist at Auschwitz. It is a story of survival, humanity, and above all, it is a love story. Lyle is a Jewish prisoner in Auschwitz. He is intelligent and well educated, speaks several languages, including German, and the Germans think he is someone they can use. Lyle is given the responsibility of tattooing the identification numbers on the prisoners. This is how he meets Gita, who he tattoos and with whom he falls in love. Lyle realizes that he can use his position to help himself and others. The genre for this book is historical fiction, and arguably Holocaust literature, as it is a story based on fact. However, it is related in interview 60 years after the events. As Helen Morris said, "It is Lali's story. I make mention of history and memory waltzing together and straining to part. It must be accepted after 60 years that this can happen, but I am confident of Lali's telling of his story. Only he could tell it, and others may have a different understanding of that time, but that is their understanding. I have written Lali's." The genre of the Holocaust breaks all the rules of defining other genres. Usually a piece of work needs to make artistic demands, flexes and contorts narratives, resists limpid morality, and compromises reality's details. When it came to the Holocaust, it seemed horrific to want to tell the story in an artistic way. The Holocaust as a genre makes sure that the written work is factual and truthful, and that far outweighs any literary merit. The main character is Leo Sokolov, a Slovakian Jew who is transported to Auschwitz in 1942. This is Leo's story of survival, of meeting the love of his life, Gita, in a place full of fear, horror, and death. Gita is a young 18-year-old woman sent to Auschwitz. Gita represents the strength of loyalty, friendship, and love. Her love for Lael helps them both survive their imprisonment. Silka is a beautiful young 16-year-old who, because of her beauty, is chosen by the Commandant to be his mistress. Silka is also allowed to keep her long hair. This poor child was subjected to horrific experiences. Victor and Yuri are civilian workers at Birkenau, who show compassion towards Lael. They end up doing business together, with Lael swapping gems and money confiscated from prisoners for food and medicines that Lael distributes to other prisoners. Boretsky is a SS officer who is Lael's supervisor. He is a sadistic drunk who Lael knows is capable of killing anyone at any time. No questions asked. Just another dead Jew. The characters in this book show the sacrifices made to help each other and to survive. The characters are robbed of their dignity and identity. They are known only as a number. Trauma is strong throughout the entire book, starting with being taken from their homes in Chapter 1. One day they are safe and living with their family. The next day they are on a cattle train being transported to hell. In his attempt to be positive, Lael says to the other men in the train, "We stand in shit, but let us not drown in it." And he tries to shrug off their glares with smiles until he thinks, "Who am I trying to kid? I'm as scared as everyone else." He later contemplates, how can someone do this to another human being? In Chapter 14, the trauma is extended to German SS officer Boretsky, when he and Lael are given the job of finding 2 prisoners who have been exterminated. It describes this as, "Bodies, hundreds of naked bodies, fill the room. The bodies are piled up on each other. Dead eyes stare. Men, young and old, children at the bottom. Blood, vomit, urine and feces. The smell of death pervades the entire space. Lael struggles to breathe, to stand. Boretsky says one word, shit. That one word from a sadist only deepens the well of inhumanity that Lael is drowning in." Trauma is evidenced during a conversation between Lael and Silka in Chapter 24, when Lael is saying to her that she should not carry any guilt for what she has done, that she is the bravest person he has met. Silka replies with, "I did what I had to do to survive. If I hadn't, someone else would have suffered at the hands of that pig." These traumas, kidnapping, murder, and rape, are 3 of the most traumatic experiences people could endure, especially with the knowledge that they were helpless and there would be no justice. One major factor that impacts on the literacy of the group in the book is highlighted by the author. In an interview published in the Irish Times, Heather Morris speaks of how Lael did not tell his story until after Jeter's death because he was worried about the repercussions his story may have for them. Even though Lael knew he had not collaborated with the Germans, he was concerned that Jeter would be exposed to whispers or innuendo. There was a strong survivor guilt complex. Heather Morris went on to say that all of Lael's survivor friends whom she interviewed suffered from this complex. Morris describes Lael's telling of his story as, "He shed the burden of guilt he had carried for over 50 years. Lael was not the only Jew who wanted their story to be known. Menachem Kaiser states that the Holocaust is one of the most thoroughly documented events in history and still entirely resists comprehension. Many people wrote with their special literary gift, while others just documented the happenings of the day. The call to memory has the salutary effect of educating others about the Holocaust and ensuring victims are commemorated. How could they not? They lived through the murders of their family, their friends. They lived through the relief they felt in the mornings of not being caught up to their execution, but then the guilt of losing someone they knew and loved. However writings of the Holocaust are regarded literarily, it is important that the stories and memories of the Holocaust are told and retold so as this horrific historical fact cannot be repeated.